Hello, everyone. Welcome to December Spirit Talk. This is where we meet on the first Friday of every month to talk about psychic stuff, spirituality, and explore energies that are coming up for the collective right now. I'm Christopher Mitchell. I'm host and astrologer. This is Reverend Ginny Brown, a clairvoyant psychic, and Scout Bartlett, a clairsentient psychic. And yeah, I'll be putting links to everybody's websites in the chat box, and as well as a space where you can donate if you'd like to support the program. And we will just jump right in today. So Ginny and Scout, I was wondering, now that we're at the end of 2020 and starting to look back on this like insanely transformational and high energy year, um, where do you see that we are right now? Like, what do you feel in the collective energy currently as we're kind of coming out of 2020 and heading into 2021? Ginny, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Um, Hi, everybody. Great to see you. Thanks for coming. And yeah, 2020 has been an interesting year for all of us. And I feel like there's a big point of gratitude kind of coming up as we're moving at the end of the year and we're starting to kind of know where a lot of the pieces are starting to settle. Even in the places that have offered us a lot of unknown and that are still unknown to us, like when will the pandemic be over? Some certain areas of our political climate that are still unknown. We're starting to feel a shift, and this shift is from the work that collectively we've been doing. And I think it's kind of a point of gratitude right now. Like, the energy has come down in the collective quite a bit, even though there's still turmoil and fear and things like that governing it. At Chris, like you and I discussed, right? Like, there's been a major shift in the vibration of the planet, and kind of really the fear of the unknown as it's been coming up. And so I feel just kind of a deep sigh of relief in a lot of areas for the collective, but there's still a lot more work to be done, and so there's an activation around, like, what are our next steps, and really staying focused on what sort of role we want to play as this next year comes to term, and staying focused on the work, not just kind of getting up from the table and thinking it's all over. Like, there's a lot more that needs to be done, and that requires our presence and our focus to continue the work. And so I think it's a really important time to be grateful, to be thankful, and to say what's next and be ready for that. Scout?
Well said. Absolutely agree with everything. And there is a real key place that energetically, every year runs through a cycle. And the level of juice in the recent cycle has been really remarkable. So there's a couple of pieces that are showing up. One, uh, kind of like, once we're up on a step ladder, now we can see the top shelf. We've been elevated frequency wise across planet Earth, across the experience of Earth. We've been elevated frequency wise across the Earth in such a way that we're closer to the frequency of intuitive or psychic, and we're also closer to the frequency of those that have crossed over. And so it's kind of like you got the volume turned up on your psychic hearing aid without anybody warning you. That suddenly, if it was a physical hearing aid, suddenly you would hear loud noises that aren't really loud noises if the volume was turned up. Well, you're going to be getting psychic input at levels that, bluntly put, I mean, I've been professionally taking in and being used to psychic input for a long time. And I'm being startled at some of the levels of psychic stuff that's showing up in my session work, but I'm also being startled with some of the levels of psychicness that's showing up in day-to-day world. Not necessarily that I identify it, but since I'm clairsentient based, clairvoyant means visually receiving our intuitive input. Clairaudient means auditorily receiving our intuitive input. Clairsentient means that we pick it up as body sensations. And since I'm primarily clairsentient based, I'm noticing that with this elevation of frequency, there's big waves of whatever the heck is going on in other people that are beyond what I've habitually been accustomed to a point where it's like, whoa, wait, that was my surroundings that just bounced me around. That wasn't mine. And so there's a real key place of what's me and what's what I'm being immersed in, and coming back to your center to let what you're being immersed in flow right on through you. So I just talked for a really long time, but I have one more point I want to add. I've made a new little insight recently that I don't have it fully worked out. And I joke about that. I've got a presentation I do about the Master's Prayer from the teacher Jesus. And I do a presentation about that. And when I first started doing it, I said, I've been thinking about this for a little while. And then I noticed a thing in my journals and found out that a little while was 5.5 years. It was like, oh yeah, a little while. Well, I've only been thinking about this piece for a tiny while, but those of you that play in your intuitive realm, I'm discovering that people who are able to generate, I'm going to phrase it, an unwitting following. Like if you could shoot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue and your followers would still be on your side, you know, an unwitting following. I'm looking at that those folks have an octopus-like talent at just firing out what are called energy cords in every which direction, and that anybody that they catch your attention, those cords velcro in from having caught your attention, and then they're jerking you along with an energetic link between you. So those of you that know what this phrase means, I've been busily pulling and cutting cords with everybody in the White House every time they come into my mind, and I'm noticing, that gives me a whole different level of peace. I've been being energetically jerked on and angry about it because I didn't like what was jerking on me, as opposed to I'm going to go wear my army boy costume and all my big guns to go play cosplay. You know, I've been being jerked on by these cords, and it's way handy to cut those cords from everybody right now. I know that was way too long, but there you go.
I've never thought of politicians as interdimensional krakens before. That's it's an interesting visual. That makes me curious to talk a little bit about chords, actually. I know that that's one of Ginny's specialties. And I'm curious about that phrase, cutting chords in particular. I heard a spiritual teacher of mine recently say that you actually kind of want to reframe that to like releasing chords or dissolving chords, because cutting is in some way like a violent action. And maybe that's a good jumping off point, and kind of hear what Ginny thinks about that.
Can I dive into that one instead, Chris? Sorry.
Yeah, no, please.
When I work with chords, one of the things I teach about them is that primarily chords, to my view, primarily enter our body basically in the location of spleen, which is on the left side of your body, roughly where your left elbow touches your ribs. Lungs have to do with grief. Liver has to do with anger and rage. Spleen has to do with connections with and how you're doing with other people. Kidneys have to do with overall emotional state. Heart is all about Hallmark. And bad movies. But my primary view, and I use cutting chords just because people so frequently use that phrase. My primary view of chords is the first thing you want to try and do is an imaginary hand sweeping down the left side of your body, or if you need the reinforcement, a physical hand. When I teach it in class, people can actually feel them with a physical hand. It's pretty cool. But an imaginary hand sweeping down and then grabbing all of those chords, because truthfully, all chords cost energy. They're a good tool to use for a temporary moment. They're an energy drain to leave them on all the time. And so sweeping down that left side of your body, and then my view is to get a good grip on them and try to wiggle them out, like trying to wiggle out a weed out of soft soil where you want to get all the roots. Because the chords are going to be rooted in all through your system, everything from heart to love to self-esteem to sense of self to sexuality, whatever, and to wiggle them out. However, if they won't wiggle out, then my next step is disconnect them however you can, cut them. And then anytime you've removed chords, you want to immediately fill your body with white light, because the universe hates a vacuum. You don't want to leave a blank space where the cord was for something else to fill in. So yeah, I use cut chords as a short version because I hear people use it a lot. Good point, Chris. But I would actually say pull chords but get them all the way out and then fill with white light. So that was my interjection. Go, Ginny.
Yeah, that's awesome, Scout. Similar method. I feel like I've been courted on every part of my energetic being at some point. Although I do recognize and connect with you around the spleen being one of the most sensitive, because it's collected or connected to our second chakra, which is our feeler. And chords are a way to communicate and also to kind of control different dynamics. And to me, chords connect in to different parts of our body. You mentioned emotions attached to different organs, but they connect into pictures that we hold inside of those energetic spaces. So if you get courted by someone in the heart, or you're courting someone in the heart, there's a reason for that. There's a picture connected to that and an energetic exchange that's happening there. And so to actually resolve it, like if you don't want me courting you in the heart, we need to resolve the picture that causes that cord, that allows the permission. So the problem with just cutting a cord is that they come right back in most situations. If it's like someone that you're around on a day-to-day basis, like a spouse or a sibling or something like that, it's going to come right back in on the same energy as soon as it's available, because the original event or the picture hasn't been resolved. And so when energy is taken off of that type of the picture itself, then you're not going to be courted as much. So if you have a belief, for example, pictures are attached to beliefs. So if you have a belief like, I'm my mother's little helper, right? And anytime your mom is in need, you get courted by her, right? You feel like you need to help her. She could be across the country, she could be in a completely different place, but you still feel like you need to save or help mom, right? So until that mama's little helper picture is resolved and de-energized and a new belief system takes place of that, which ideally is a relief of belief, like no longer believing that to be true, not necessarily replacing it. Like I no longer have to be mama's little helper. That's not going to really help you as much as just letting go of that belief altogether. Then that prevents her from being able to cord you. And some cords are intentional. They're about control or power dynamics or about love or communication. They can be really simple. But the ones that are kind of invasive and controlling to you, you want to look at what's underneath. And that's something both me and Scout are skilled in doing.
Yeah, and I don't want anybody to come away from it. I always like to point out to everybody, nobody has to have a teacher, nobody has to have a book, nobody has to have a class. But I noticed when I was learning piano, I learned it a lot faster when I had somebody that knew piano than if I figured it out on my own. You can recognize chords when people are coming to mind frequently, even if it's a politician. If people are coming to mind frequently, particularly with an emotional aspect to it, if people are coming to mind frequently out of, you're probably, that's a chord. And we really use chords, whether we're sending them out, they're not an evil thing. It's just that they cost energy. They're no more an evil thing than leaving on, a space heater when you're going to be out of that. Well, no, that might cause a fire. They're no more an evil thing than leaving on every communication device in your whole house and never turning anything on. It's not an evil thing. It just costs energy. But we do chords as a covert communication. When we're sending them out, we're trying to find out how we're doing, which is exactly, oops, you're that direction, which is exactly what Ginny was referring to in terms of we have an associated picture. We're trying to find out how we were doing. Oh, good, we're in the same places this time. But when people are courting us, they're trying to find out how they're doing with us, including their level of dominance if they're a dominant individual. And the chords are part of why any of y'all that have ever watched your friends be in a relationship with a, I'll call it a compressive dominant, just to give it a word I just made up, that's squashing them down so that they'll stay within the dominance range. The reason that your friend gets stupid is because the dominant's got that cord connected into them, and in tugging on that cord, them conforming and compressing and conforming and compressing makes sense, because when they don't, they get kind of a jolt back as if they're out of place and they're not doing well, they're not safe. Kind of the same way that Candida is so lovely about the fact that if you've got a nice Candida colony going inside your gut, if you eat sugars and things that feed Candida, they release chemicals that make you feel like you got a real hit. You know, you get a burst. And if you don't eat the things that feed them and they start to die off, they make you feel crappy. Well, we'll just think of dominance as being very much like Candida. Ooh, that was judgmental.
The bit there about chords aren't evil in and of themselves makes me curious, because, and I've heard Ginny, I've heard you refer to chords sometimes in a more neutral way, where like they like some, I'm wondering, are some chords manipulative exchanges, they activate guild, they trap you, but are other chords just, I mean, is a chord also how we simply communicate with one another, or is there a distinction there? Like when we reach out to someone outside of ourselves in a healthy and balanced way, and we're sharing energy but not holding someone, is that like a channel versus a chord or something? Like, what's this distinction here?
Nice place to go, Christopher. And chords are not evil. They just cost energy.
Yeah.
However, if we're being tugged on by a cord, it's going to change our behavior. So an example, some long time back, I had done a retreat up in a very far away place in the mountains, above, well, between Santa Cruz and the other side. But anyway, and one of the people at the retreat that was a friend of mine asked, "Can I follow you out? I'm not sure I know my way out of here." Sure, no problem. But I had 3 people in my car, and I'm keeping track of my friend following me, and I'm keeping track of my friend following me. And now I'm in the conversation and I've forgotten about her until we got to the bottom of the mountain. And I glanced in my mirror and, oh crap, she's not behind us. Did I lose her? And rather than turn around and go look for her, I just pulled off the road for a second to see if she'd catch up. And then I reached out to sense her. That was a chord. And what I sensed was she was completely content. She was not in fear or terror. So I'm thinking, okay, she's fine. And I got back in the car and away we went. But I released the cord when I was done, sensing how she was doing. Chords are a covert or an under the surface communication. It's always way better to communicate overtly. Chords are a covert, or in this case, we didn't have cell phones. This was a way for me to check in, how's she doing, and then let go again.
And chords can only come in on your permission, with your permission, conscious or unconscious. Like if you're going to
Or
some,
unconscious.
yeah, first, like if I'm going to scout for advice and I'm opening up my 7th chakra to his advice, to his information, you know, I'm giving permission for him to chord me through there, right? I'm giving him permission to give his advice, his certainty, his information. Now, where it can be controlling is like with gurus or people who think that they know best, you know, using that to control people. Now, there's an agreement with it. The person who is being controlled is giving a subconscious agreement to be controlled. So there's never an energy exchange that doesn't have a permission level both ways. And when we feel victimized, it's because we're unaware typically of like our role in what we're creating in the dynamic. And when you're talking about a channel, like a channel I kind of see it like a highway, like a 2-way street, which just means information is kind of coming back and forth without a fixed sort of, like a chord is like, I'm going to chord you in the 5th chakra so that we can communicate telepathically or very clearly, it's one-on-one. A channel is more of kind of like an open energy field that people can kind of, like a highway, you get on it and you can get off of it. It's very engrossing. Yeah, perfect. I like scouts. Little bear hug there. But there's a difference. And so if you ever feel like you're being courted by someone, just ask yourself, how am I allowing this? You know, like what is my part in it? And then that's the belief or the picture that you can resolve in order to kind of change the paradigm. But if you know you're going into a situation where you're sending out a cord, like we're in a dialogue or a communication, you just disconnect it. You lovingly disconnect it. They're meant to be temporary channels that we give and receive information. In old, shamanic practices, a healer would cord from their heart or from their throat or from their 6th sense in order to heal another person. Or they would hook into their system to drain it out, to use cords to drain out energy. And so a lot of healers or people in this world subconsciously use cords because it's something that they were trained to do a long time ago. And we no longer need those kind of systems to heal. Like, we've evolved as healers to use different methods. But it is a very rich subject. I'll open it back up to you, Chris.
I'll make the comment that the reason that when I talked about pulling cords out and then fill yourself with white light was exactly what Jenny was just talking about. Fill yourself with white light so that you're filling in the part of you that was vacant, unsure, unsecure, wanted to give yourself away, wanted somebody else to be in charge, whatever. Fill that in with white light so that you're not leaving the vacancy. There's not a great big, please cord here vacancy sign, but that you're actually refilling you and reconnecting you. It's amazing. I didn't know I knew this much about cords. I could probably talk for an hour.
I think something, yeah, I'm feeling that
You
too.
just might.
I'm wondering if this is going to end up being the cord episode. It's just so interesting. I think something interesting or meaningful to add into this conversation here that's coming up for me is, and it's something, Ginny, you were saying about sometimes when you're courted, it's easy to feel victimized, like instead of owning your power to undo the picture and release the cords. Or going back to the beginning of this conversation when I was talking about the violence inherent in and we're not gonna stop calling it cutting cords because it's so trendy and so fun to say. But the
because that's better.
Releasing cords is a nice way to think about it. But something in there is that it's easy to think of this, it's easy to make this a pushing against or a separation or a I'm being victimized sort of thing, where like the evil, the dark energy vampires are courting me, they're taking my energy, they're sucking on me, and I'm going to push them out, I'm going to get rid of them, they're bad, etc. And I think a more loving, unity-based way to do it is to recognize like that it's a mutual co-creation, to release the cord because you're evolving and you want to be part of a healthier exchange and a healthier energy signature for yourself. And in releasing the cord, you thank that other person for teaching you the lesson. Thank you for teaching me more about boundaries, about discernment, about whatever it might be. And you recognize that in the release, you're also facilitating for them as they feel the cord not working anymore. They get to evolve on their journey too and find out whatever they need to find out from that mutually,
I like to point out nobody can take your energy. Exactly what Jenny was just saying. Nobody can take your energy. This is like me cashing my paycheck in $10 bills and then walking through the tenderloin and holding them out to everybody and then coming out the other end of the alley and saying, they took all my money. No, you gave it to them. If you're allowing them, because again, the way you'd recognize a cord is if you just feel that you are regularly tugged on toward thoughts toward that direction, which is what finally had to be recognized that there's a whole nother level of this game on people who are skillful or talented or have a knack for drawing a following. And I'm going to be doing a lot more research on that. So, check back in 5 years. But nobody takes our energy. It's us giving it. Even if what we're doing is allowing it to be siphoned, it's us giving it, whether it's our dominant partner, whether it's our needy partner, whether it's our needy mom, whether it's our needy sibling, whether it's the sibling that we'd like their respect, so we're desperately feeding them energy so they'll like us, whether it's the boss, we're definitely feeding them energy so that they'll like us, or so that we'll know we're okay, or so that we'll feel like we're doing okay, or so that we'll feel like we've contributed enough for them to think we were worth it. As if our worth is only established by their benefit. I had to pay the admission, so it was worth letting me breathe their oxygen. It's just unhook, come back to your center, fill yourself with light, and then see what there is to say.
I tend to ask myself, what is my role in this? And what do I get out of it? Like, when I give away my energy, what do I get out of it? And it's not like, not to come at it from a victim sort of standpoint, but genuinely, like, if I am giving my energy to someone who I think needs it, am I getting out of it being the hero of that situation? Like, if I'm giving, or if I'm letting someone take my energy, what do I get out of it? And it helps me to understand myself. and to understand my role in a relationship dynamic. And when that's healed, it doesn't mean that the relationship goes away. It means that the relationship gets to evolve, you know? And so, and that really, like, if someone is asking you for energy or asking for your support or your knowledge, really what they're asking for is for you to help them find it in themselves. And that's the core of my work, is to kind of guide you right back to your own knowing that sometimes gets clouded by, you know, doubt and fear and just kind of the things that we and experiences from the past, to get those out of the way so that you can really connect to yourself. And so, like, when in those energetic exchanges, the more we can understand about our own kind of role in it and find out like what it is that we get out of it, that part we can resolve. And just, you know, I'm very sensitive about words, you know, and of cutting something. If I cut this pen in half, right? Like if we pretend this is a cord and I cut it in half, there's still part of it staying in my energetic space, right? And so when Scout is talking about pulling out a cord, and pulling out the roots of a cord, I think that's really important if you're really wanting to let something go. Because when you pull something out and you pull out from its roots, you're really releasing it back to the person. You're letting them have back what belongs to them, and you're keeping what belongs to you. But if you cut something, you know, you're leaving a part of them in your space. And so even though it can just feel very simple to kind of like find a cord and cut it here, recognize like part of that process. And I think the words that we use are very important to see kind of like where our attachment is in our healing process, right? Like, I'm going to cut the cord with my mom, right? It's like, okay, you know, I'm going to cut that, but I'm keeping part of it with me. Why? And there's no wrong answer to that. You know, sometimes we want to keep channels open, and you heal in your own time, but be attentive to the words that you use, because they carry energy and dynamics of their own.
What about when a cord is sticky, or we're trying to pull it out and we're finding that we don't quite know how, or we're having trouble, we haven't like mastered our psychic skills yet maybe, and we end up like, we're burning sage, please get off of me, we're putting your name on a piece of paper and cutting it up into a snowflake and then burning it and asking the angels to help, and we're still feeling kind of stuck. Like, is there some core understanding that needs to be in part there? Like, so if the ritualistic kind of superstitious behavior isn't working, how can we really get in there and know that we're releasing a cord?
You'll know
You
when
skipped
released when they're
rapid
not,
alert. Go ahead.
when you can release them when they're outside of your space. And sometimes it's good to call in a little extra support for that. Because if you're trying to release something and you're calling in using every magical and mystical tool you can think of, and it's not going away, it just means there's something you can't see, or you're not seeing. Not that you can't see it, but there's something kind of blocking your way of seeing what the real cause of it is. So, you know, I think it's good to throw up a little white flag and ask for some support to get an insight as to why that's happening. And then you can move forward in a process that's more thorough. Scout?
Some
I think
people
I
are really,
interrupted you.
no, I interrupted you, my bad. And it was only to crack a joke, so we didn't lose much. But some people are really good at hooking into people and getting those people to then cooperate with, getting others to then cooperate with their view of reality and live inside their context of reality. Sometimes you'll have friends come out of a divorce or a relationship, or a job for that matter, and you watch them take a while to sort of get back to real reality rather than inside somebody else's picture. So if you find that you're trying to pull a cord, if you felt like you pulled a cord and now those people are tugging on your head, again, pull the cord again and again and again and again and again and again, you know, however much it takes, because it's free. It's not like, oh darn, I have to put another quarter in the pinball machine if I want to play another game. So part one. Part two, if you feel like you're psychic enough that you're sensing them and it's hard to pull it out, pull harder. But exactly as Ginny was saying, pull harder and be letting go of whatever it is in you that wanted that person's approval, that wanted to know if you're safe, that wanted to know if you're okay, that wanted to know how they felt, what they thought, did they like you, did they not like you. Pull harder and let go of whatever attachment you had to them. Now, together with that idea, when I do teach this, and if I teach cutting cords, the next thing I will always say, which I forgot here, is then dissolve the rest of that cord inside of you willfully. That's how we travel in that space, is our will. Willfully dissolve the rest, oop, you're over there. So funny. Willfully dissolve the rest of that cord in you, just as Ginny was saying, willfully dissolve it. And what I do when I pull them is I roll them back on themselves. Now, it's really key to know, it doesn't matter whether you sent the cord and hooked into them or whether they sent the cord and hooked into you. Doesn't matter. Solution's still the same. Draw it out of you, but then roll it back on itself. And kind of like those party blowers, which I found out there's no other name for them, but you blow them, and then the minute you stop blowing, they roll back on themselves. When you pull a cord out of you, you want to roll it back on itself and let it roll up back on itself toward the other end of it. Whether you created the cord, whether they created the cord, doesn't matter. All cords cost energy. All unconscious cords that are just staying in place unconsciously are an energy drain on you. That's the deal. But that's just the price. It just costs energy, you know? Yeah. It's not like you can do it wrong. It's just, it costs energy. So, oh God, I'm going to go there. I found for myself way back in my youth, marijuana and I were very close friends all the way through college. We rarely went a day without saying hey to each other. That almost made it sound sort of innocent, which it was in my mind. As I developed my sensitivity, I found out two things. One, I was working kind of like Ram Dass teaches, where he discovered getting high from LSD, but then he found that it was really a natural thing that he wanted to build on his own. I found that I build it on my own, so I live at that state. But if I put marijuana, THC, if I put pot in my system now, my energy's down for about 3 days. Now, I'm pretty sensitive to it, since that's how I make my living, is my energy. And so, you know, I wildly participate in pot every time that I'm not going to need to work with a client anytime in the next 4 days, which is like almost never. And, you know, wildly participate with the stuff the kids have now. It's like one hit, I'm zoned. Thanks very much. Oh God, this went way too far. But it's my choice. If I don't care if my energy's down for the next 4 days, I can spend it all on a few hours of being stoned on pot. It's a trade. If I've only got, you know, so many dollars in my pocket, I can buy dinner, or I can buy ice cream, or I can buy a movie. It's a choice, but, you know, sometimes some choices are more nurturing than others.
No shame, Scott. I'm pretty sure that at least 5 out of 10 spiritual seekers had a similar relationship to marijuana to evolve through at some point, you know. I think and just one thing to add in, and maybe an alternate approach here, or another way to think about it. Something interesting I heard is that when you're releasing a cord and you're pulling it out, a friend of mine told me this, you can take it and you can plug the other end of it. You can visualize plugging that end into source instead of into you.
I'm not going to disagree with your friend, Christopher, but I would highly suggest rolling it back on itself so it goes back to them, as opposed to trying to redirect the cord to source.
I guess maybe it's not your job. Okay. Well, I'm going to defer to Scout's kind of like psychic engineering mastery here.
It sounds loving, but people have very conflicted beliefs and ideas about source, you know, so I wouldn't play puppet master.
I guess it doesn't help you to try to take care of them when you're trying to release a cord. It's to come back to your own center and let that be whatever it needs to be. Okay. Well, I'm glad we explored that together.
You know, if it's that guilt that they're courting through anyway,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you trying to love and light it to source is going to backfire.
Let's go there after the meditation, because someone in the chat box is asking about how to release things like guilt that keep cords coming back. But for now, we're at the midpoint of Spirit Talk, so it's Scout's turn to do a meditation. I think he'll teach us the live beam that'll help us poof the cords off of us.
Cool. Thanks, Christopher. And
Mhm.
yeah, I will. It's our live beam, Life Insights Vertical Energy Beam Meditation. It's right there. But we're going to run through that, but I'm going to take it into a tiny bit of a very fast process. So I'm going to work you guys through a piece of a process that normally takes 45 minutes, and we're going to do it in 2. So think fast. Okay. If you feel like you're not keeping track, don't worry about it. The energetics work anyway. If you feel like you are keeping track, walk out of it really proud, but because you deserve to be. So if y'all want to, if you're comfortable to let your eyes go closed, just let your eyes go closed and let yourself draw in a long, deep breath till your lungs are full, and let that air flow out again. And as you're ready for another breath, let it be a long, deep breath. And this time, imagine that air flowing out through your body as if your body were layers of silk or fabric. And with each breath, let the air flow in and let it flow out through your body, feeling your body open and expand. And in your imagination, I'd like you to imagine reaching a hand down to the center of this planet Earth and stirring that warm, rich, dense energy there in the center of the planet. Curl that hand into a cup and use that cupped hand now to pull a streamer of energy right up through the earth directly beneath you, up and into your body just in front of your tailbone, and connect it there. Let yourself feel the matching of that warmth, center of earth, energy passing through energy right up through earth and into your body right at your tailbone. And now stretch that streamer of energy from its connection point at your tailbone. Now draw that earth density energy up deep inside your body, just in front of your spine. Draw it up through your abdomen, through your chest, through your neck, through your head, out the top of your head, and all the way up and into what I'll call source. Big energy cloud. And now, using your will, increase the flow of energy up that beam, surge it, richer, denser, faster, brighter. Increase the energy up through that beam, deep inside your body, just in front of your spine, all the way up and into that energy cloud that's source, so that you are the center and aiming part of a streamer or geyser of energy that's flowing up and fountaining into that energy cloud I'm calling source. And as you're in that state, as you increase the energy flow up that beam, you may notice a pressure inside of yourself. Just relax against that pressure and allow that beam through the middle of you to be creating a glow from inside of you, to glow out through you and out through everyone and everything around you. Just let it create a glow from inside of you to glow out through you and out through everyone and everything around you. Floors, chairs, walls, ceilings, people, baby ducks, baby rhinos, whatever you have in your surroundings. So that your energy field on your frequency is able to glow right through the energy fields around you that look like a wall or a floor or a chair or a cat, whatever you got. People. Perfect. Now take a moment and notice in yourself 2 things at once. Notice that sense of that beam of energy through the center of you, and notice your recall of how it's felt when you were urgent or worried or pulled on or frightened of or taken care of or trying to find out how you were doing or trying to figure out what the heck was going on with an other or several others. Notice 2 things at once: that center part that is that beam, and wrapped around it the parts of you, stuff in the way, patterns, that have been pulled on when you've been urgent or worried about other people or other dynamics. Notice the difference between the 2. Okay. Now allow that glow from that beam inside of you to glow right out through those urgencies that you've felt, so that you can actually connect those urgencies to being a reminder for you to light you up and glow. When you feel that urgency, you can recognize it's a reminder to light you up and go. When you feel that tug, that pull, that compression in your throat, that pressure in your heart area, that twist in your gut, that pressure at the back of your neck, that's a reminder for you to simply relax back into letting that beam of energy through the center of you, which is yours, and letting it create a glow, releasing the attachments to all of those other tangles and pulls. Allowing yourself to memorize that, allowing yourself to put that into a place in your memory where you'll have access to it, and you can allow it to be an ongoing trigger that you can choose to remind your subconscious to release into your own center. With that reminder, with that memory, with that willful choice, give your body a big breath now. And as you let it out, just let it stretch your neck and shoulders all the way to the palms of your hands and the arch of your feet. Let your eyes come back open and come right on back into the room. You guys did good.
And trying to come back into host mode. Oh, so where were we? It's I think we were talking. Thank you, Scott. That was lovely. I love the energy. For anybody who doesn't know, Scout's doing energy work on us the whole time that he's guiding the meditation as well. So it's a nice bonus for anybody who joins us for the first Friday Spirit Talk. It's a free energy work session.
And it shows up in the recording, which is one of those things that cosmically makes sense to me, and to my engineering brain it's like, what? But it works.
Yeah, totally. So right before we took our little intermission there, someone was asking about if there's tools or ways of thinking about releasing emotions like guilt that keep us corded in. Like we feel guilty. We feel like we're supposed to be, it's not okay for us to let go of cords or to not caretake because we have to be loving, right? We have to be spiritual. We have to give ourselves away because we're just accustomed to being there for our family. It's kind of in the collective cultural hallmark Lifetime movie thing. And so how do we untangle ourselves from that and work with those emotions that keep us trapped in situations that don't really support us in our evolution? Ginny, would you like to take that one first?
Well, guilt is rooted in I did something wrong. And its whole like pull, its cord, guilt's cord to you is to try to get you to do the impossible, which is to change the past. You can't change the past. And so recognizing, releasing yourself from what you've done and bringing in radical acceptance, which means not accepting that that it happened, but accepting all sides of it and then releasing it separates you from guilt. Because anything done from guilt you'll never, it's like an Ouroboros. There's no amount of work that you can do to undo the past. And so it by design keeps you trapped into cycles of caretaking or of kind of just groveling, trying to make up for something that's already over. And you have to let yourself off the hook for that. And it's easier said than done, but acceptance is the key. It's the neutralizer to guilt. And what's interesting is that there's no mistake that can't be undone in your present day actions. So whatever it is that you feel guilty about, if you've accepted it and learned from it, chances are you've already been presented an opportunity to do that over and over and over, because that's karma, until you accept that you've learned a new way of doing it and that you no longer have to carry that bag. So guilt does you no good. And look at what it is that seems unforgivable, no matter who's giving it to you. Like a parent is giving you that guilt, or if you're giving that guilt to yourself, there's part of you that believes it. That's why it sticks in your space. And when you let go of that, when you look at like, this is what I did, and you just fill in all of it with acceptance, that is self-forgiveness. That is like a number one healing tool to use is forgiveness. And so first and foremost, you have to forgive yourself. And then you can move forward without accepting those cords. They won't have anything to hook into if you're not trying to undo something that was done. And I recognize there's a little bit of a paradox in what I said, but you have to look at when you're living your life in this moment and you're presented the same challenge or the same situation and you're doing it differently, you've learned. So there's no reason to hold on to the past. The past can be undone in real time only. Scout?
just quoting, life's like an hourglass glued to the table. No one can find the rewind button now. So breathe, just breathe. Thank you, Ananala. And it's a real truth. So one piece that I'll give you is that live beam meditation, the first part of it, of creating that beam and then noticing the difference between the beam and my stuff in the way, that in and of itself is one of the most powerful, well, I use it because it is the most powerful energy expanding exercise I've found for me. You know, everybody, you know, some people like snickerdoodles, some people like oatmeal cookies, some people are just disappointed if it's not chocolate chip. But it's a tremendously power-filled energy flow. And the truth is, everything that we've got in us is shaped in our energy. When I go to do sessions with people, I sense out their energy flows. I actually draw it on a little stick figure. I've got these little pages printed up that have a little stick figure right on them with all the chakras. And when I first do a session with people, I do a quick sketch of their energy patterns on that little stick figure, because it tells me all kinds of stuff about what's going on. And with, you know, thousands of weeks worth of experience, I can tell current, old, long-term, been doing it for a while, had this when you came in. I can detect that. But the truth is, when we can straighten that beam through the middle of us, we can come back to what it is we really are, as opposed to being caught in the stuff in the way. A whole lot of our sending cords and a whole lot of our receiving cords, together with the guilt factor, is also a I am not enough self-evaluation. Again, as if I need to have given them something, or I need to make sure they're okay with me, or I need to make sure they're thinking I'm okay, as if somehow I needed to, I mean, here's a fun one for y'all. Imagine that a dear friend invited you, back when we were allowed to do such things, I'm old enough to remember this, invited you to dinner. And they said, I'm practicing an entirely new thing I'm cooking. You don't need to bring anything, just bring yourself. Take a quick check inside yourself and find out how many of y'all could do that. Just show up. That you didn't have to bring wine, or if they'd said, well, I'm doing a specific wine pairing, which handcuffed you. So, oh God, now they're doing a wine pairing. I can't bring a bottle of, I'll bring flowers. That's what I'll do. I'll bring flowers, and I'll bring flowers in a vase so they don't have to go get a vase and put them in. Or, you know, hell, maybe I'll buy them a new chair for their living room, and I'll bring them a new desk chair or something. I don't know. I got to bring something. I can't just show up, because I myself need to have paid my admission. A lot of us do a lot of our relationships from a deep inside place that says, I need to have done, that I'm a human doing, not a human being, and I need to have done for them for it to have been worth their while to allow me to be a part of their space. When we can come back into our center, oh God, slow down, Scott, and allow ourselves to be connected. First chakra, sense of self. Second chakra, sense of nurturance. Third chakra, sense of power. Fourth chakra, sense of we love Hallmark. Fifth chakra, sense of communication, connection, interconnection. Sixth chakra, sense of intuition. Seventh chakra, connection with sense of purpose. When we can allow that to have earth density energy flowing through those parts of our circuitry, we're rebuilding our ability to notice when we got knocked out of whack and come back into whack. Does one come back into whack? When we got knocked out of whack and we refill with whack. Maybe we were out of whack and now we have some whack. But when we're checking how much we can allow ourselves to let our energy flow, we're shifting the consciousness habits that had us decide we were insufficient. I know that went way too long, but there you go.
Maybe we get whacked back in. I think it's probably syntactically correct. So one more. So
I'm going with refill my whack.
Refill my whack. Get whacked up.
This is not a show anymore. I don't know where it's going.
I know where it's going. So the because there's this one angle on this conversation about cords and guilt, where the questioner was asking about particular to family and to relationships with parents, and I wanted to address that because I've worked with this a lot actually in my spiritual development. And I think something that can be really helpful is recontextualizing, kind of zooming out and seeing something in a different way, similar to how Ginny was talking about the way that chords come into our space is through pictures that we hold. And so if you shift the picture, then maybe there's space to experience relationship dynamics in a different way. And a way to work on that pertaining to regarding family is to kind of zoom out of being, oh, I'm Christopher Mitchell and I was born here, and to these two parents in this town, this has been my life, and like to, you know, we cast them in these roles. This is my mom, and this is my dad, and this is my sister, and this is my brother. And um, to kind of release all of that and to zoom out into this way broader soul perspective of these are my soul friends. And I've known them in lots of different ways at lots of different times, and they've shown up to help me, and I've shown up to help them. And just like my friends or my partners or my teachers or all the other people who show up, we're all just souls playing together in the, you know, and so taking mom or taking dad or taking whatever label off of that person and interacting with them as a soul friend. Like, what are the dynamics that are healthy for me to have with this soul friend if I take all the stigma of mom off of it and I instead think of it in terms of just like, what's a healthy relationship from one soul to another soul? And you work and you relate in that way. Um, and you treat them and conceive of them in that way, it frees up a lot of, new ways of working with relationship energy, I think.
Christopher, do planets chord each other
Oh my
in
God.
astrology?
Hey, nice shot. Well done.
I don't
I'll
think
give him
so.
a moment when I just speaking to say, y'all get to remember all the time that people interact differently. Jenny's voyant, I'm sensory, Christopher's mental. I described a feeling approach to this. Christopher described a thinking approach to this. Jenny described how the pictures work. It's always fun to get educated how to communicate with people that run in different operating systems and how to hear them as they run in different operating systems, so that then when you're out with the people in your world, if everything they describe is, well, it looks to me like, now you know you got to give them pictures, not mental variation or feeling stuff. You're going to have to teach them in pictures if everything they say is pictures.
I don't know about planets courting each other and not courting each other. Thank you, Scott.
And I gave you that whole break to recover and have a moment to think.
And I thought
Well,
about it,
like,
and I don't know.
do you think about squares, or, you know, is that an energetic chord between planets?
It's a
I think.
relationship dynamic,
Mhm.
but everything is
It
moving and
feels like.
flowing so constantly that chords with planets, they wouldn't stick in the same way that they do with humans, because these universal archetypes are, I guess they're more sovereign in a way. Like they always keep moving. They always stay in themselves, even when they're relating to each other.
Interesting.
Yeah. You know, planets can come into conjunct for, and that this is the timing, is like, let's say that there's the Saturn Pluto conjunction of 2020, and Saturn is the planet that rules kind of structure and discipline and boundaries, and Pluto is the planet that rules rebirth and transformation and shadow. And they've made an agreement of sorts. They come together. They're going to be conjunct for a year. They're going to be within 3 degrees of orb for a year, and then they're going to move on. And neither of them question that. Neither of them tug on each other. Neither of them try to stay longer than they are supposed to. They come into relationship and they keep moving. And in a way, that's actually an interesting model for kind of how it could be with us if we were fully in our flow and trusting this lover's coming into my space to orbit for a year and then they move on, and maybe that's all the time we were meant to be together, and maybe that's perfect, you know. um,
And maybe we didn't get to know that up front. We just got to find it out as it happened.
Yeah, to stay in the flow is to stay neutral and to not kind of give it a futuristic sort of determined path for how it's going to go. If we behave just like the planets, we might be a little bit more at ease, it seems.
I think we're kind of trending that way, actually, going back to what Scout was saying at the beginning about our psychic tuned innedness increasing massively over this last year. And it's going to just keep on going that way until I think it'll get easier and easier for us to stay in our own flow and to trust that flow and to be following our own excitement. And I think maybe that will start to take some of the sting or the courting off of the things that are so heavy to us that kind of break up our flow now. Breakups, transitions, all the things that kind of scare us as humans might start to get lighter, and we might be able to flow with them more easily as Earth continues to ascend.
It turns out I don't have to have a mental handle on knowing what I am to go ahead and let myself be what I am and see how that turns out.
So we're getting kind of close to the end here. I'm gonna wrap us off with like a hopefully 2-minute astrology breakdown, and then we can talk about like what we're up to. We're kind of coming out of a really, really challenging passage right now, and it's like I was thinking about this in the shower earlier. We're not out of school yet, like it's not summer vacation yet, but maybe finals week is done, and maybe this is that couple of weeks of class where like it's not actually that important and we're all playing together a little more than we were a few weeks ago. I don't want to paint it in that like super overly optimistic light, but we have come quite a ways. And Saturn and Pluto, the aforementioned planets, they're backing off of each other, and that heavy energy is not going to be back for like 40 years. Meanwhile, Jupiter, the planet of expansion, is coming in to meet Saturn, which is that planet of structure. And they're going to actually be moving out of Capricorn, which is kind of a heavier, more grounded, more serious sign. Saturn and Jupiter are moving into Aquarius on the solstice on December 21st, which is more progressive, innovative, lighter. It's air, it's ethereal, and it's humanitarian oriented, it's future oriented. There is going to be a real significant shift of energy here as two major players come together, moving from earth to air and kind of opening up a window into the new, into what's possible instead of what has been. We've spent a lot of time this last year or two or 5 looking at what isn't working about what has been. And through that deep shadow work, we're at the point now where we're ready to look ahead to what could be. And we have less retrogrades next year. We don't have much retrogrades for the next few months. We're heading into an interesting passage, and I'm really excited about it. All the astrologers I know are really excited about it. There's still going to be other stuff going on, but there's some significant shifts afoot. And yeah, so I'm Christopher Mitchell, an astrologer. You can talk to me at unlimitedastrology@gmail.com. We've got Reverend Ginny Brown and Scout Bartlett. I'm going to put both of their websites in the chat boxes. And if they'd like to let us know some of their offerings and some of what's coming up, I'd love to hear that. And then we'll see you in 2021 for Spirit Talk in January. Thanks everyone for coming today.
So you can book one-on-one sessions with me if you like, and also as a form of tithing, I offer a free meditation every morning from 8 to 8:30, Monday through Friday, and 9 to 9:30 over the weekend. It's a free donation-based meditation just meant to help you ground, get in your body, get centered, and get set for your day. Really beautiful group of people join every day, and I'm just really thrilled with the energy of it and would love to see more people there.
I'm Scout, as in Pathfinder, Bartlett. Part of my tithing is I fund and produce and air a radio show. It broadcasts in San Francisco every Monday and Friday morning at Dark 100, 6 in the morning, 6 to 7. But it also streams at the same time, and it goes into the radio archives on my website. The show itself has been recognized as the longest running major market personal growth radio program in the nation. We're kind of proud of that. So we've got plus or minus 2, we've got a gazillion episodes that are in our website as archives that you can listen to, absolutely no charge. You do have to register for the website, but we don't buy, steal, sell, or monetize that information in any way whatsoever. In fact, we ask you to register separately for our mailing list. It doesn't put you on that. And I always ask you to go ahead and like Life Insights up on Facebook so you can keep up with what we're doing. That stuff is all free. There's hundreds of hours of teaching there. We're developing our healing class to figure out how to do it remotely because it had a whole lot of face-to-face stuff. That's going to be rolling out first of the year. But Sunday, the 13th of December, I'll be doing the, I think, 34th maybe annual Holy Days message. I go into full deep trance and I allow my guidance to take over my body so that it's their energy and their concepts, no filter through my thought process or my mind. And they classically have talked about what was this year from a spiritual perspective and what is the coming year from a spiritual perspective to give us that bit of insights. And that'll be on the 13th. It'll be a Zoom. We'll have the Zoom link up on my website so that you can join in. We are asking a donation, but quite frankly, I would normally charge a fee, except that I don't know how to do the logistics of that. So we're just going to put up a donation link. You can kick in or not. Because this is the first year where I don't have $1,100 of space overhead before we get started. So at least I'm not going to lose money this year. But anyway, that's on the 13th of December. It'll be in the afternoon. We're bouncing it between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock. So if you guys would like to vote which you'd like, you guys can vote. I'm taking votes if you'd prefer 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. And it'll run for probably 2 hours. Anyway, that's Sunday the 13th. Love you guys very much for being here. Christopher, Ginny, it's such a treat to get to play with you guys and get to do our processing right out loud with people watching us all naked. Thank you guys for that. I'll sign out. Thanks, guys.